Hey friends, it's Dan. As you may be able to tell, I'm in a hospital room right now. It's early Friday morning. It's about 2:30 in the morning, and I'm not here to talk about why I'm in the hospital and everything, but I missed Celebrate Recovery last night. And since it's 2:30 in the morning and I'm wide awake, I just wanted to share something with my CR family and anybody else who wants to hear it. So lately I've been reading through the book of Exodus, and I've been finding it so interesting because there's a lot of parallels. Exodus is the story of the Israelites coming out of bondage, out of slavery, into nationhood, into statehood as a people in the state of Israel. And in their journey, there's a lot of parallels because in recovery, what we're trying to do is come out of a form of bondage, whether it's bondage to addictions or just bondage to our hurts, hang-ups, and habits, aka sins, and in coming into a right relationship with God, in learning to walk and live in freedom. And so I'm excited as I've been going through Exodus about how many parallels I see. And I wanted to just share one of those, something I've been thinking about a fair bit. I don't have my laptop, so I couldn't write about it. So I thought I would just do this for you real quick. So if you haven't read Exodus chapter 2, it's a classic story. I hope you'll read it, but I'll give you a quick summary, okay? The Israelites are in slavery. The Egyptians actually want to kill all the young male Israelites because they think they're procreating too much. So this family has a child named Moses, and they try to hide that child because they don't want him killed. And ultimately, knowing that they're not going to be able to hide it, they kind of orchestrate this little plot to get Pharaoh's daughter to find the baby and to think it's abandoned. And so they do this, and this child born into slavery winds up being adopted by the princess of Egypt. Now, they also made sure that the princess knew that she could hire a midwife, and this midwife turned out to be, or a nursemaid, if you will, turns out to actually be Moses' mother. So Moses grows up as a prince in the royal household of Egypt, but also knowing that his heritage and his family are Jewish slaves. So he grows up, and one day he's out there and he visits his people, and he sees that there's an Egyptian slave driver who's beating a slave. And so he kind of looks this way and that, and he kills the Egyptian, and he hides the body. And the next day, he discovers that people know about it, and so he flees. He runs away from Egypt entirely, and he goes like way far away to the east to a place called Midian, and he runs into some shepherds out there, and he winds up just living with these shepherds for several years. Now, what on earth would that have to do with recovery? Well, it actually has to do with the very start of the recovery process, because in order for us to recover from anything, the very first step that is so crucial is stepping out of denial, right? If I really don't think something's a problem, then I'm not actually going to put the effort into trying to fix it, right? I'm not going to bring it to the Lord and say that I need help if I don't really believe that. So we have to start by stepping out of denial. And Moses is actually a great example of that. I want you to notice something. Moses knew that he was in a position to help his people. He knew who his people were. He knew that he was an Israelite, that he was a follower of God, or at least supposed to be. And so when he sees his people that he identifies with and loves, he knows that his job is somehow to help them out. But instead of using his royal influence and position, he just acts out of anger. He lashes out and he kills a man, right? Well, the very next thing he does then is try to hide that fact, right? That's denial. Here's a great definition of denial. Denial is doing anything and everything in your power to avoid the consequences of your action. Now, you might say, well, it's logical. Of course, he killed somebody to run away. Well, sort of, but he was also a prince, okay? What he did is he literally abandoned both his adopted family and his biological family. God had put him into a position to be able to do something, and then he tried to do it his own way. He created a huge mess out of it, and then he runs away and just abandons everyone that he's supposed to be having an influence on. He goes off to the land of Midian, and there's something really interesting towards the end of this chapter. In Exodus chapter 2, verse 21, it says this, that Moses was content to dwell with this man and his daughter in Midian. Moses was content. And that's the problem. That's denial, okay? When we're content to just continue living our life the same way, when we get comfortable with whatever our habitual sin is, that's denial at its worst. And what's so cool about the recovery journey is maybe you came into recovery for something totally different. Maybe you've been working on that for a long time. Maybe you've had a lot of success and growth and healing. But in time, God is going to show you other things in your life, maybe things you weren't even aware of, that he wants you to work on. Different aspects that for you, it was always like, well, that's not a big deal. That's not a big deal. But then God begins to say, this is kind of a big deal. This is something I want you to work on. We can choose to be content with that. We can choose lies like, well, it's always going to be that way. Well, I've kind of always had that problem. Not a biggie. But when God has said, no, I want you to begin working on that, that's when the rubber meets the road. That's when it's time for you to say, well, am I going to step out of denial? Or am I going to just continue and just be content? Moses was content for 40 years. And God had to do some big stuff to get his attention, but he wouldn't let him go. And so that's my hope for you too, is that if there's something that God is putting on your heart and he's showing you that you need to step out of denial on this, that he won't let you be content with that he won't let you just continue going the same way. He might use pain, okay? He might use things that are very unpleasant to get your attention on that. But it's also a message of hope, okay? I'm not saying that to make you feel condemned or point a finger or say, well, get your junk together and don't be like Moses. I'm saying, isn't that actually wonderful, though, that God continues to be at work in you, that he's continuing to want to move you and change you. We call that sanctification in the big Christianese words, but it's the idea of becoming more like Christ, and God's not satisfied to just leave you where you are doing the same thing forever and ever. He wants to change you, to conform you to the image of Christ, because he knows what's best for you. Just like with a small child, kids need to be kids, right? But if they stayed kids forever, we would definitely think that's unhealthy. Sometimes we have to let kids experience things, and sometimes painful things, so they can grow and become what they were called to be in life. And God's doing the same thing with you. Well, I hope that encourages you today. For what it's worth, I'm actually having a good time here in the hospital for the most part. I do a lot of sleeping, but I've gotten to run into some wonderful people, had some great conversations, and God is good. So I pray that you experience his joy today. And my CR family, I've been spending time praying for you too. So I love you. I'll see you soon.